I'm Chelsea Higgins, and this is my presentation over my individual project for the Latham Fellowship in Scientific Engagement. My project was entitled Immunology at Eye Level, and it is a published book about the immune system that really tries to explain the really complicated topics of the immune system in simple terms, poetry, some doodles, and some travel photography from my winter trip to Kenya. First things first, I had a few goals, and this project had a very specific rationale. So, it's hard to scroll through your social media without seeing an anti-vaxxer. Anti-vaxxers are people who do not believe in vaccinating their children and basically are just very misinformed. They think that somehow vaccines cause allergies or autism or, a variety of other things, that it's toxic, which, those of us in STEM know that that is not the case. There's also a global pandemic, if you weren't aware. COVID-19 sparked the creation of this book because a lot of people are sharing a lot of immunology-based posts without really understanding what they mean, and they're drawing conclusions that may not be 100% correct. Before these things came to mind, though, I was reminded of my childhood experience with friends and family members who unfortunately had cancer and didn't really understand what was going on and just knew they were sick, but nothing else. So my goal was to talk to these individuals who, are educated adults that just don't have a degree in STEM, and kind of show them what the immune system is, what these different terms mean, so they can better understand what is going on in the news, what they're seeing on social media, and make proper assumptions and conclusions. Initially, my project looked very different than it does now. I wanted to do a book, that was for sure, but I wanted to take these wonderful landscape photographs and go over them and do mixed media portraits to draw T cells and show how a tree kind of looks like a neuron and stuff like that. I also wanted to compose a score that kind of emulated the immune system. This is obviously a very large undertaking, and it is not what I ended up doing. If you're curious about an example of what I would have done with the music, you can look up Sleeping at Last, their astrology albums. They write a song for each different planet, and I was attempting to do something similar with the immune system using my background as a music composition major. So I had all of these very large plans, and I had really planned and started working in December. However, then at the end of December, I traveled to Kenya and decided to go in a new direction. So while I was in Kenya, I met these wonderful people, and I had an amazing experience. Kenya, if you've never been, is diverse and colorful and resilient and just this amazing place to be. And I was there conducting public health research, specifically over why HIV/AIDS is still the #1 youth killer and why women are, continuing the circle of poverty by becoming pregnant at such young ages. Now, the answers were very surprising and at sometimes very disturbing, but that's not what this book is about. While I was having these experiences, though, I met this wonderful little girl named Anna, and she, oh my goodness, she was sassy. She had attitude for days. And at one point, when I was talking to her about what she understood about sexual health and what she knew about viruses and stuff like that. One of the little toddlers, if you could even call him that, he looked like he just learned how to walk a month ago. He waddles on over to her and hands her this ball, and she like picks him up and picks up the ball and stuff like that. And, you know, I don't know if it was the jet lag or if it was just dehydration. I don't know if I was hallucinating, but watching that interaction really reminded me of what happens when a T cell passes off a cell with an antigen on it to a B cell to create antibodies. And something about that interaction just like made me really think about it and be like, oh, I should focus my book on that. And so thus I went in a very new direction. And the final product is Immunology at Eye Level, a book that I wrote using pictures of the immune system, or not pictures of the immune system, pictures of Kenya with doodles of the immune system, some poetry to make it more relatable and to help further explain the more specific scientific information. And finally, of course, writing about a page worth of, you know, it's not quite textbook level explanation of each concept in the immune system, but it's small, digestible chunks of information that give you a basic foundation of understanding each concept without making you feel like you're going to school. And of course, I did not create music, and I did not draw over the pictures because these pictures are too wonderful to draw over. And now that I had an actual visual representation of doing that activity, there was no need. And finally, I did publish the book on DNA Day back in April, and it has been live on Amazon since. To collect feedback, I went through a couple different methods. Of course, I initially had my editing and reviewing team. These consisted of many individuals who helped me by reading through the book, making sure it was understandable, making sure the concepts were correct, even going through and circling words they didn't understand or would appreciate having in a glossary. These people ranged from actual like science professors in immunology, to the people I went to Kenya with, middle school teachers, middle school science teachers, and I think that's about it. But I tried to have people both inside the target audience of educated adults outside of STEM, people a little below that who maybe don't have a college degree, and people above that who are actually professors in the thing the book is about. So along with gathering all that feedback and making revisions as I go, this completed version has a couple different methods of feedback as well. You can see I obviously have Amazon reviews. I have one Amazon review right now, and I'm pretty sure it's my mom. But I thought that would be a good mechanism of receiving feedback. If people don't like it, or if they really do like it and it was helpful, then I have that. But of course, not everyone leaves Amazon reviews. Typically, the only people that leave Amazon reviews either feel really, really strongly about it in one way or the other. So, for example, if you really, really, really hate a product, or the product was missing something, then you're going to write a review. And if it is the best thing you've ever seen and you want all of your friends to buy it, you're going to write a review. Typically, things in the middle don't really get that much traction. So I also created a QR code that leads to a private survey. The answers aren't quite anonymous. They can be if you choose to. But a incentive to do this QR code survey is that you actually get behind the book content, and that includes travel photos that didn't make the cut, poetry that didn't make the cut, my process, storyboards, timelines, different versions of the book, different experiences in Kenya. Like if you want to know more about what my research in Kenya actually included, if you wanted to know the results, if you want to know the programs that we implemented, if you want to know more about the charity organization that brought us in, all of that stuff would be in the behind the book content. So if you follow that QR code and leave a review, and you go through the survey that has very specific questions about what did you like about the introduction, what didn't you like about the introduction, and stuff like that, then you have the option at the end to put in your email and ask for behind the book content. So that's just kind of a fun little incentive for people to review the book, and hopefully I'll be getting more reviews like that soon. I learned a couple lessons while doing this project. The biggest of which being that sometimes you need to focus in. You might have this wonderful giant idea that you really want to implement, but sometimes you have to take a step back and see what is actually doable. You know, are you looking at things in a realistic sense? Back in November, when I was first starting to implement this project, I, thought I could accomplish the world. I thought I could write, I think at that point, the book was going to be around 200 pages. I thought I was going to go in extreme detail and, write music and translate the book into different languages and all of this stuff, all before my implementation in March. That is not doable for any book, specifically not something like this. And, after taking that step back and analyzing, what's my deadline, what's my timeline, how am I going to accomplish all of this without, failing all my classes? Then I started to realize that if I go that into depth, where I'm talking about the immune system for 200 pages, the person reading it might as well just be reading a textbook. That's going to turn away many viewers because, if you're reading something like this, you don't want pages on pages on pages of information. That's going to be very isolating. You're not going to read that. That's going to take way too much time out of your day. Whereas with the content that is in it now, you can pick any topic you want. For example, I just turned to the signaling page. And, you see your picture, you see your short little poem, and then you just have about a page of information that goes into depth enough that you have a basic foundation and you know how to research more into the topic, how to, your search terms, what you're going to Google. But you're not left feeling like you just attended a lecture, because no one really likes that feeling unless you are actually a STEM major. Yeah, I think that would have to be my biggest lesson. That and being flexible with the timeline. I was so dead set on publishing on, I think it was March 13th. It was the Friday school got out before spring break. And with the pandemic, which we obviously did not see coming, I just realized that my deadline wasn't really important, and I rather have it published in a beautiful, correct, complete manner rather than having it published and then going back and realizing there were a bunch of things that I needed to change. I think one last lesson that I learned is that you should always proofread, and you should have many people proofread. The first edition of the book actually has a typo on it. Specifically, it's the printed copy I have now, and I misspelled the word resilient. Resilient. That's the word I misspelled. Out of all of the jargon that I defined, out of everything, I misspelled the word resilient. And so, had I had maybe just one more person proofread the cover, maybe I wouldn't have made that mistake. So, not being afraid of asking for criticism and feedback, and also analyzing it yourself just one last time from a new perspective. That really, I think, would really help you make a perfect edition, or as close to perfect as it can be, and, not being afraid to go back and change it. Because now, since I changed it, anyone who purchases the book is going to get the proper information and not the misspelled version of resilient. So, yeah, summing up the lessons I learned, be resilient. by taking feedback and implementing it, even if it seems like it's past the deadline. Reanalyzing deadlines and seeing what you would rather put out. Would you rather put it out on time, or would you rather put it out in a good, complete format? And of course, the biggest lesson, being realistic about what you can and cannot accomplish, and truly looking at the big picture, but also narrowing it down to something that's going to be not only correct and fun and complete, but also something that's going to have a very big impact and will actually be attractive to your target audience. Finally, I do want to make a few acknowledgements. Of course, I want to acknowledge Lori Adams and Brenda Shetty, because they are amazing and they supported me throughout this entire book. And, I have author copies sent to them because they wanted to read it. I want to thank, let's just go through the acknowledgement section of this book. I want to thank, of course, my lab mentors, Dr. John and Diana Colgan, along with Dr. Maureen Neiman. They all either read through the book or supported me in some way while I was writing it. Dr. Angela Cordell was an extremely big help, because she went through and actually made sure that everything I said was correct. And a big thing that I actually overlooked was that antigens aren't the actual thing that's invading. It's just the little flag on the invading cell. And so I didn't realize that I had written it in the incorrect way until she pointed it out, and she took the time to really go through and leave notes on every single page. So that was amazing, and Brenda Shetty actually did as well. I want to thank Elizabeth Gostola and Hannah Kinson, because they went to Kenya with me and they, helped me brainstorm, and they listened to me rant very late at night when we should have been going to bed. I want to thank Thomas Daniel for going through and reading it, and of course pointing out the typo on the back of the book. My mom, Emily Higgins, because she went through and really, she was the target audience that I was writing for, because she is a middle school teacher. She's educated, but she doesn't know that much about STEM. And so she and Cindy Slock, who is a middle school science teacher, went through and tried to see what they could understand, what they couldn't, and they actually helped me create the glossary at the back of the book. Megan Miller-Smith, who is also in my target audience, she is a paralegal, and she went through for readability and comprehension. And finally, of course, I want to thank the Latham Fellows of 2019-2020. Through our weekly updates, they were with me this entire process, and I plan to be sending them author copies as well. That pretty much wraps up my thank yous, but I'm sure there are many other people who have helped inspire this project, specifically Marafiki Community International, which helped me go to Kenya in the first place and gave me a job to do once I got there. Projects like this are not the work of one person, and I truly could not have done it without the 20 to 30 people who helped me get the book to be what it is today. So thank you to all of them, and thank you for watching this presentation.